Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
Good morning, I'm Rob Woodard. This is Sunday Journal. With me today is Kathy Zagzebski. She is the Executive Director of the National Marine Life Center in Bourne. That's a facility that looks out for the injured sea creatures that wash up on our shorelines. We're going to be discussing the very busy year the center has had, especially with the record number of endangered Kemp's Ridley's turtles. Good morning, Kathy. Thanks for being here today.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Great. So can you give me a brief history of the National Marine Life Center? I know it's been a work in progress for the last several years. So where has it been, and where do you see the organization going?
Yeah, the National Marine Life Center was founded by a group of Cape Codders in 1995 to address the need for marine wildlife rehabilitation, because Cape Cod is one of the places in the United States that sees the highest numbers of marine animals that strand ashore in need of help. And we've been growing ever since. So we rehabilitated our first patient that was a loggerhead turtle in 2004, and our long-range plans are to build out our facility located in Bourne and Buzzards Bay. To that end, we opened the first phase of our new marine animal hospital about 3 years ago now, and we've taken in several dozen animals over the last 3 years. It's been incredibly busy, and we've almost never had an empty house.
I'm sure you haven't. I'm sure it's a very busy place. Now, I know that you deal primarily with the seals and turtles. Is that correct? What's the most exotic animal that you've had in there? Have you had any rays or anything like that? Or
there's rehabilitating marine animals is very closely regulated, so we are only permitted for sea turtles and seals.
Oh, okay.
And also we work with the state as well on some conservation projects involving some of our native turtles, such as red-bellied cooters and diamondback terrapins. One day we will be able to bring in dolphins and small whales. So that's our long-range goal for the complete build-out of the hospital. And so those will be exotic when we get there.
I would say it'd be pretty exciting as well. Wow. So who do you have in-house now? I know that you just released Kennedy a couple weeks ago, and so who's in residence at the NMLC?
We currently have 27 sea turtles in residence at National Marine Life Center. This is almost 3 times the number that we've ever had on site at any previous time, so it's really been stretching our limits in a good way. And were all cold stunned on Cape Cod this last November and December. They were rescued by Mass Audubon at Wellfleet, and the volunteers there who did the yeoman's job of patrolling the beaches in the worst weathers and bringing in over 1,200 turtles.
Right.
And then initial triage at the New England Aquarium's, their facility in Quincy. We've got... And then we brought them into our facility on 3 dates in November and December, and we've been working hard with them ever since.
Now, how many can you actually accommodate? It probably varies because you can't accommodate as many loggerheads as you could Kemp's Ridley. But how many? Let's say how many Kemp's Ridley? What would be your max there?
Before this year, I would have said 20.
Live and learn.
So it is very size dependent as well. So as you mentioned, if these were the larger loggerheads that can come in anywhere from 50 to 100 pounds at the juvenile age class that they're stranding, we'd probably only be able to fit 2 to 4 per pool.
Right.
But because these are Kemp's Ridleys, and a lot of them were actually on the younger end of the spectrum that strand, probably only maybe 2 years. The range of strandings is estimated at 2 to 5 years old for the Kemp's Ridleys. And so a lot of them were really tiny. They were less than 5 pounds when they were brought to us. Many of them have not quite doubled yet, but they've definitely gained half again their body weight from stranding.
Let's talk about the stranding now. Now, my understanding is the turtles are in Cape Cod Bay, and normally they would just kind of float back down south when the weather turned, but because of the shape of the Cape, obviously they kind of get stuck. So you find them, I would think, mostly on the north side of the Cape.
That's exactly right, Rob. We the turtles are in this area for kind of a unique reason. At their age class, they've just spent the first year or two of their lives basically floating around the Gulf Stream and the warm currents and taking that advantage of a safe habitat to grow larger. And then at the age that they start to come closer to shore. And sometimes if the Gulf Stream is north, and there are sometimes eddies that spin off the Gulf Stream, they'll put a large number of the turtles or a certain number of the turtles into Cape Cod Bay. And we have great habitat here, as we all know. It's a wonderful place for animals and people. In the summer, the water is plenty warm enough for the turtles. We've got lots of the food, the crabs that they like to eat. But then as the water starts to get colder, they need to swim south because they're cold-blooded reptiles. And as you mentioned, the arm of the Cape is in the way. So most of the strandings do happen on that north side of the Cape, basically between Sandwich and Truro. And that's where Mass Audubon has that daily beach patrol looking for the turtles, because the quicker you can pick them up once they get washed ashore, the better chance the turtles have.
Right. And I know that this year there was a record number of Kemp's Ridley strandings. I think there were over 1,000 on Cape, were there not?
This year was unprecedented. There were 3 times the number that stranded on Cape of any record high previously. There were over 1,230 odd turtles. And about 700 to 800 actually were alive and were brought into rehabilitation facilities. The ones that didn't make it, the scientists are working on conducting necropsies over the next couple months to just do investigations and collect the data from that. But I think what's really dramatic is, that turtles from Cape Cod have filled almost every single sea turtle stranding hospital between Massachusetts and Texas.
Is that right? Wow.
Yes.
How many is that? Dozens, I would think.
There were, I believe, in the order of 400 to 500 that were sent out of state.
Wow.
So,
and you've got 27 here.
We have
here
27.
On Cape. Okay.
We had brought in 32, but some of them unfortunately didn't make it, which is a reality. The New England Aquarium still has quite a number there, but we all are having manageable numbers now, thanks to our friends in the network elsewhere in the Southeast.
Now, I know that you guys not label them, you identify them with numbers and names and things like that. Now, how long will those numbers last? Will they, my question is, do you see frequent flyers? I mean, do you see some of these guys that come back and get stuck year after year? Or has that been an occurrence yet? Very
rarely do the turtles come back in. On occasion, it's been found, but most of the time, they're all released on the south end of the Cape, and this early in the year they would be released in warmer waters if we're looking at possibly releasing the first group of ours in Florida toward the end of February, beginning of March. But they rarely come back in. We put a flipper tag on them, so we would be able to notice them if they came back in. The numbers that you see either on the pictures or the webcam, those are just temporary numbers so that we know we can target the right animal for food and medicine.
Right.
Those are just a simple paint stick so we can tell them apart in the pool.
Now, do you track the animals once you let them go?
Most of the time we don't put a satellite tag on. For one, a lot of these animals are still too small for even the smallest satellite tag. And satellite tags are expensive. So there have been a number of studies, some led by the New England Aquarium that we've participated in over the years to kind of learn what happens after they're released. And they seem to spend a lot of time basically in the southeast before eventually going back to their nesting grounds in northeastern Mexico. So we probably won't be satellite tagging any of these.
Right. You're listening to Sunday Journal. I'm Rob Woodard. Today I'm talking with Kathy Zagzebski. She is the executive director of the National Marine Life Center in Bourne, and we are discussing the center's efforts to rehabilitate injured sea animals. So tell me about a typical day at the Marine Life Center, Kathy. What happens there? Obviously, you have to feed these animals. You have to, clean the pools. Tell me what goes on.
So sometimes the duties that you don't think about are the duties that take all the time. The cleaning and then the record keeping, because it's really important to keep the records. So when we come in, our animal care staff and volunteers will go through the charts, look at who needs the medicine that day, the treatments, check the food board on which we record the amount of food that the animals are eating and the amount of food to prepare. They'll prepare the morning breakfast, and that entails cutting up herring and squid. And they'll also prepare the vitamins for the turtles because they are eating dead fish instead of live fish. A lot of the nutrients are lost, so we add certain vitamins to help them regain their nutrition. And basically prepare a platter with cut up fish and squid. We take an average weight of each of the pieces so that we can record that out. And then we go out to feed, and we'll take one tank at a time, and each of our tanks has about 12 to 15 turtles right now. We'll have a couple of spotters and a couple of people feeding, and then a recorder, which is an important position because we have all the turtles listed, and we basically put a hash mark every time one of them eats a piece of food. So we'll say number 38 herring steak, number 48 squid head, and we'll do a hash mark so that later on we can tally up the amount that each one ate. And then there's the cleanup from that. There's cleaning the tanks, cleaning the floors, cleaning the kitchen, completely cleaning the entire facility, tallying up, testing the water for temperature and salinity and pH, just to make sure the water parameters are within healthy parameters. And then then we'll do some treatments on the animals. Some of them are still getting antibiotics, various medications, do exams. We take everybody out once a week to weigh and measure them. The veterinarian takes a look at everybody at least once a week now. It was more often at the beginning. Then we repeat it all again in the afternoon.
So it's twice a day. They get fed twice a day.
They get fed twice a day.
So I would imagine it's pretty similar, the same sort of deal with the seals.
With the seals, it is very similar. They get fed 3 times a day. Usually it depends on the animal. The pups, when they come in, and it's getting to be pup season now, they actually get tube fed up to 5 times a day because they need to get little bits of nourishment throughout the day, as any mother any baby will tell, or any parent of any baby will tell you.
Now, when the seals are released, what happens to them? Do you know where do they go back and join some seal population somewhere, or the interaction with humans? How does that affect them?
What we've seen with the seals, I mean, we are very careful within the hospital to limit our interaction with them, even though they're in our facility. We're aware that it's very stressful for them as wild animals to be around people, and we also want to make sure that they can be kept wild. So we limit our interaction, we limit our talking. When they get to the point where they can eat fish on their own, we actually will often just throw it over the side so they don't even see us. So we try to limit that and mitigate that. When they're released, most of them don't have satellite tags, again, for the same reasons. They're expensive, and we know after these years basically where they're going. But of the ones that do, we have seen that they do go to parts of the Gulf of Maine that other seals go. So they tend to frequent those areas, and they tend to, most of the time, behave as normal wild seals.
Right. Okay. Now, I know for sure that the turtle rehabs take months, and obviously it's probably a relatively expensive proposition. Tell me about your budget, where your funding comes from.
Yeah, a typical turtle rehabilitation can take anywhere from 4 to 9 months, and it really varies depending on the animal and the condition. They get sick slowly and they heal slowly.
Right.
Our budget is funded predominantly by private donations. We have a number of fundraisers throughout the year, including our upcoming Feet, Fins, and Flippers 5K at the end of May, and our Mermaid Ball later in August. So we do several fundraisers throughout the year. We have memberships so people can join and help the animals. We do grant writing and basically everything we possibly can,
Right.
Education programs, gift shops, and stuff like that.
And I know that you have a team of dedicated volunteers. You want to tell me about them briefly?
Our volunteers are fabulous. We have about 40 to 50 program volunteers.
Wow.
They spend the collective hours that our volunteers contribute is worth at least 2 to 3 the equivalent of 2 to 3 full-time staff.
Right.
And they do amazing things. They constantly astound me with their dedication to the animals and to the mission and to helping see these endangered animals go back into the wild.
Sure. Without them, obviously, you couldn't give the care that you do.
Right.
And with regard to the seals, how many seals did you see this year?
So far in 2015, we haven't brought in any seals yet, but the pup season is coming up. And if I could pause for a moment to just let you know that a lot of times seal moms, especially harbor seal females will leave their pups on the beach while they go out hunting. So anybody who sees a seal on the beach here on Cape Cod should please leave it alone and call the International Fund for Animal Welfare, IFAW, in Yarmouth at their hotline number.
Good point.
And they'll take care of it.
Right.
Last year we saw about 12 seals in our facility.
Okay. I'm kind of disappointed that you say that you limit your interaction. I had visions like, the thing kind of hangs around the office and everybody kind of, pets it. I look at them and I just want to pet it,
It is tempting until the first time that you have to clean up after them. And,
That'd be the end of my volunteer slot.
Or the first time that they come at you with their sharp teeth.
So I know that you have some programs for area school children. I know you've got one coming up for the next school break. You want to give me a brief synopsis of that?
Absolutely. We reach 8,000 to 9,000 school kids a year with our educational programs, and our next one coming up is April Vacation Week. We'll start it on the Saturday of that week with an open house, and that's the only time that we charge, and all the money goes to help the animals, and we do behind-the-scenes tours, so people get a chance to meet the turtles and any animals that we have in-house.
Right.
And then we do a variety of other programs throughout the week. You can check that out on our website at www.nmlc.org.
All right. Well, we just have a couple minutes left. Anything else you want to let our listeners know about what's going on at the National Marine Life Center?
We're just grateful for all the support. People saw the stories about the turtles. They understood that significantly increased our costs, and people dropped by with donations, with wish list items, and we're really grateful for the community supporting not only the National Marine Life Center, but in turn the animals that make the Cape Cod such a special place.
Yeah, because those Kemp's Ridley they're endangered, and everyone that you can save obviously is going to be a benefit to the ecology, I would think.
That's absolutely right. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for being here today, Kathy. I'm Rob Woodard. You're listening to Sunday Journal. With me today was Kathy Zagzebski. She is the Executive Director of the National Marine Life Center in Bourne, and we were discussing the center's efforts to help endangered sea turtles as well as help seals that strand here on Cape Cod beaches. I'm Rob Woodard. This is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.